It's time to start my Holy Grail project. Now, during my hobby journey, I have had a fair bit of interest in a lot of different armies and factions. Now, when I was first introduced to the hobby, I, like a lot of kids, had a love for the Ultramarines. Now, over time, I went off the boys in blue and found other, more interesting armies. My first proper army was an Imperial Fists army. Now, these served me well for many years. I also tinkered with some Space Sharks, or Carcharodon's Astra for those of you who prefer High Gothic, some Gene Stealers and the associated cult, and also some Custodes, which I really liked. Until I didn't. There was, however, one army I always wanted to build, and for one reason or another, I never really did. The Elysian D99, and I think it's time that changed. Now, before we move on, I'm just going to let you know that Elysian is how I like to pronounce it. I do, however, know that many people out there like to call them the Elysians. To me, this sounds like some sort of affliction, so I refuse to say it like that. So just who are the D99, I hear you ask? The D99 or Detachment 99 Elysians are the remnants of the Elysian 99th Dragon Company that were inducted into the Inquisition and then experimented on. A bit like an army of Captain Americas, if you will. Now, these guys had increased strength, stamina, and all the other superhero skills. Not quite on Space Marine levels, but you get the drift. If you are more interested in that side of things, we will be doing some more in-depth lore videos on those later. The D99 or D99 were introduced in the Anphelion Project. Again, we have some pronunciation conflict with this one. Some people like to call it the Anphelion Project, but I think if it was pronounced like that, it would be spelt with an F. But I'm no English expert, so I wouldn't know. Tolkien probably would. So the Anphelion Project was one of the Imperial armor books released by Forge World back in the early to mid 2000s, I believe. I'm not sure of the exact year, I could just look in the book, but that's downstairs. This book introduced the aforementioned D99, an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor, known as Solomon Locke, and a boatload of new Tyranids, which might well all be in plastic these days. If you're a Tyranid expert, then please let us all know in the comments below. The general gist of the Anphelion Project involved Solomon Locke and the D99, along with some Acadians and Red Scorpion Space Marines, investigating the loss of communications from a research station that's researching Tyranids on a big jungle planet. Think Aliens, but set in Jurassic Park.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Needless to say, the shit hits the fan and everybody dies. So, as I've always wanted to build the D99, I think it's time to stop making excuses and finally get this army done. It's time to begin my biggest hobby undertaking ever, at a time when I have the least spare hobby time ever, but who dares wins, right? Fortune favours the brave, and all that jazz.
And all that jazz.
So I guess before we start the project, we have to ask just what is it we want to achieve? We better consult the Palantir.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
So to begin with, and my main priority, is to build an Elysian D99 army to around 3,000 points. But it's not just the D99 I want to work on. Secondly, I'm going to try to create a gaming table to represent the locations of the Anphelion Project. Think Hadley's Hope in the middle of the jungle. That gives us two different board setups. Firstly, a generic jungle with the Anphelion base complexes, and secondly, a Zone Mortalis board to play the interior sections. Oh, did I mention that I also fancy playing through a few of the Anphelion scenarios too? To do that, we also require some Tyranids. Obviously, these Tyranids have to be painted in the Anphelion scheme, which is a sort of green and beige. Green and beige sounds a little dull, so we shall have to think of some ways to spice it up. I never noticed that Spice Girls video was so Blade Runner inspired. Actually, I don't think I'd ever seen the video until I wrote this script. Whatever happened to the Spice Girls? Which Spice Girl was your favourite? Please don't say Posh. Posh was all the rage when I was a lad. Nowadays, I think I'd probably go a bit of Scary. So along with the Anphelion Tyranids, I would also like to create a small Red Scorpions Space Marine force. Not a big one, but around 1500 to 2000 points worth maybe. It's possible I have enough marine bits and bobs in the garage to build that already. I knew that pile of shame would come in handy one day. On top of all of this, I also want to do a few themed videos based on the lore of the Anphelion Project and its participants, along with some battle reports and of course lots of hobby content videos. Now let me know if there's anything in particular that you would like to see. Now sadly there are a few roadblocks preventing us from achieving this easily. Reasons why we can't have the nice things. Firstly, is the project being such a huge undertaking. 3 armies and potentially 2 gaming boards is rather a lot. It's a huge time sink, and I'm not even sure it's even going to be possible to achieve this inside this decade in the time that I have available.
You want time? Find the magazine. We don't have time.
Secondly, it's going to be costly. 3 armies is a lot of miniatures, and 2 tables worth of scenery is even more expensive, so we shall have to try to be clever somewhere along the line. Thirdly, and this is the big one that should have probably been number 1, Elysians, as of time of writing, are OOP, or OOP, out of production. Yep, you can't buy them anymore. This means acquiring them from resellers or second-hand and trading, for example. A whole lot more hassle than just clicking buy. Now also, for this reason, they are probably going to be a lot more expensive. Luckily, there is a reason this won't sting us as much as we fear though. I already have a half-started Elysian D99 army that we can get the ball rolling with. The next issue concerns the Anphelion base scenery itself. A lot of people, myself included, thought it was one of the best looking bits of scenery that Games Workshop ever produced. Well, Forge World. And again, it's OOP. It was hilariously expensive at the time of release, so I dread to think what these cost on the black market these days. Fun fact, when I was a boy, I thought the black market was an actual market somewhere. Somewhere you could go to buy a lot of illegal things that looked a bit like a car boot sale. I always imagined like guns arrayed on tables and a bomb on a pallet next to it. Anyway, regarding the cost, I don't know how we're going to dub it in. Yes, I don't know how we're going to get around that huge issue, but I'm sure a solution will present itself.
Right, I'm sure another solution will present itself.
Our next small issue is that the rules for all of these things are well out of date. The rules for the D99 in the Anphelion Project were written for the 4th to 7th edition of Warhammer 40,000. I'm not sure how much of this stuff is going to port over. One thing I know won't port over is one of the most important parts of the D99 lists, Valkyries being dedicated transports. But again, we shall cross that bridge when we get to it.
Oh my god! Oh my god.
Now, the Temple of Doom sadly gets a lot of shit, but I think it's quite a good movie. There's also the fact that all this stuff is going to take up a fair bit of space, assuming we even get half of it done. Again, I have something in mind to deal with this issue, but more on that another day. So before we get stuck in, I just want to have a little tot up of what I have, because luckily we won't have to start from scratch. Like I said before, when it comes to the Elysians, I already have a few units. I had 6 10-man infantry squads and 6 Valkyries for them. That's actually the majority of the infantry and transports already done. However, the paint scheme and or bases might need reworking, but we shall have a look into that another time. Now, regarding the Tyranid side of things, I have a load of gene stealers hidden up somewhere, although the scheme isn't right. I do also have the Tyranids from the Leviathan boxed set and some goodies from Hive Delta, so we shall have a few of those to be getting on with. Perhaps a start collecting box on top would be enough to do the whole lot. It would be nice to add in the specific Anphelion Tyranids too though. Things like the Hierodule and Dimacharen, for example. Is it Dimacharen or Dimacharen? I never did know. The old Tyranid Haradan has been on my wish list for a fair while now. Maybe that would be the best big Tyranid to be the centerpiece miniature. What do you guys think? Can you think of a better one? For the Red Scorpions, I've various marine bits and bobs scattered around, so I'm not too worried about those. I definitely have some Rhinos and Land Raiders still in boxes somewhere, although I think the new Heresy kits are a lot nicer looking, so we might have to do some mixing and matching. I suppose we're going to have a look in the garage in the new year and see just what we have. As for the scenery, we definitely have a green grassy mat for starters. I've also a half-started kit-bashed Anphelion base from years ago that I suppose we could finish off. Oh, and there's also some Zone Mortalis stuff in a box somewhere. I probably want to start with the Zone Mortalis stuff, as I like the idea of some smaller games on those tiles to begin with. Off the top of my head, that's all we have to begin with, and we might see other things turn up as we get moving with the project. So as I said before, this is a really huge undertaking, and it's going to mean a huge amount of videos in the pipeline, and I'm really looking forward to getting started. As per usual, please let us know what you're most looking forward to in the comments below. I'll see you soon in the next one. Love you, bye!